Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, we're going to be learning a really cool technique. Now, I actually stumbled onto this technique when I was browsing the subchapter on Reddit for ukulele, and one of the members there posted a performance of a pop tune. I can't remember the name, but I'm going to put the performance video below in the description box, so check it out. And she all of a sudden started doing this drum-like tapping on the body of the ukulele, and it literally got like 150 upvotes, which is the equivalent of like 150 Facebook likes. So it was widely popular, and I just thought it was super creative and unique, and I had to learn it. So I did, and now I'm going to teach you guys how to do it. So this technique is really cool because if you think about it, for those of us who like to perform songs that we sing as well as play ukulele to, most of the time it's always taught, or we're always learning it with strumming. Which is cool, but when you play a bunch of songs back to back to back, it starts to sound a little mundane if that's all you're doing. So the logical step to go to next is to add a backbeat, and the buzzword for ukulele is chucking. So we're going to add a slap on beats 2 and 4, and we get something a little bit more interesting. But then, again, we hit a bit of a plateau and we get stuck there. But now we've got another option. We can add this really cool percussive element to it. So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to do that technique, and I'm going to go ahead and break this lesson into 3 parts. But before we talk about those 3 parts, if you want to get the tabs to follow along with, it's 100% free at rockclass101.com. Just click this link right here, or you can do a search for drum-like rhythm. And also, there's going to be an on-screen tab viewer that's available. This is a really cool feature, and it allows you to hit play, watch the tab scroll across in real time. You can highlight bars and loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. It's going to be something that's really helpful for learning this tune that much easier. That's going to be available for premium members. Alright, so I've got this lesson split into 3 parts. So the first part, we're going to be learning the 4 chords. They're all basic chords, so if you already know them, then go ahead and skip to part 2, which starts at this time. Part 2, we're going to cover the strum pattern that was performed in the very beginning of the performance video, but it's vital that we understand the rhythm that we're playing. So if you're new to understanding rhythmic notation, how to count the beats that you're playing, then you want to check out this lesson before you go any further. Alright, and part 3 is going to cover the actual technique. So part 3 begins at this time. Alright, so let's go ahead and kick into learning the chords. So we've got 4 chords. We're playing in the key of C, and our chord progression is a 1, 6, 3, 5. So that means we're playing the C chord, so C major. So to form C major, you're going to use your ring finger on the 3rd fret of string 1. The rest are open. Next chord is A minor, so we're going to take that middle, put it on the 2nd fret of string 4. Everything under it is open. Then we've got our staircase shape for E minor, so that's the 3rd finger on the 4th fret of string 3, middle finger on the 3rd fret of string 2, and your index on the 2nd fret of string 1. And our G string is open. And finally, we've got G major. So this one, we have index on the 2nd fret of string 3, ring on the 3rd fret of string 2, and middle finger on the 2nd fret of string 1. And again, our G string is open. So each chord gets 1 measure, and we're in 4/4, so we're just going to count to 4. So let's go ahead and go through all 4 chords real quick. So we're starting on C. 1, 2, 3, 4. So C, 2, 3, 4, A minor, 2, 3, 4, E minor, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4. Now the tricky things is always the transitions, and the last 2 chords are going to be the hardest because you've got 3 fingers at a time. Remember that when you switch from one chord to another, you want to move all 3 fingers at the same time or in unison. So a lot of times I see beginners go ba 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 fa, that's not going to cut it for this tune, so we've got to go together. So you see how all three fingers move together. So that's something that you want to work on if you haven't yet. So that's the chords we're playing. They're all basic stuff, and I'm sure people watching this already know those chords. So let's go ahead and kick into the strum pattern. Now this strum pattern I've seen described as the island strum. Actually, Cynthia Lynn's got a really great lesson on it. If you Google island strum, you'll find her lesson on it. I don't remember if she talked about the rhythm, because it's been like a year and a half or two since I actually watched that lesson by her. But she rocks. You should check her out. What I want to do is I want to explain what we're playing, because in order to do this technique, it's vital and very, very important that we understand the rhythms that we're going to be hitting on. So let me play this strum pattern, and then we're going to break it down. So it sounds like this. It's probably the most popular strum pattern for ukulele lessons. It's been described as down, down, up, down, up. That's the hits that we're doing with the right hand. Now the problem with only understanding or learning it as down, down, up, down, up is that it doesn't tell you the rhythm. So down, down, up, down, up can mean down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, or it could be down, down, up, down, up. Right, you see what I'm getting to. It doesn't explain the timing that we're supposed to be playing it in. So going back to understanding notation, we know that we're in 4/4. We know that that means that there's 4 beats per measure. The quarter note gets the beat. So think of it this way. A good rule of thumb is that we strum down on the downbeat and we strum up on the upbeat. Let's begin with quarter notes. If I count out one measure of quarter notes, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. You saw that every time my hand went down, I have the count of 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are my quarter notes. But each time that my hand goes down, it also goes up. So if we were to subdivide quarter notes into 2, we could play twice as much in that same time frame. So each time my hand goes up, we could play another note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So in essence, we're playing eighth notes, right? So we're playing twice as much in that same time frame. That's how I want you guys to think of it. The way we count eighth notes is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now a good rule of thumb is that, like I said, we strum down for the downbeat, we strum up for the upbeat. So if we were just to try that, if you make a C chord, we're just going to go down, up, and just strum straight eighth notes. Let's try together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay? So that's going to be really important, because when we have an end on this technique, we're doing an up. When we have a downbeat, we're doing a down. So that's something you want to keep in mind. So good rule of thumb is when it's a downbeat, we strum down. When it's the end or the upbeat, we strum up. So let's break down the rhythm of this island strum. So the first part sounds like this. 1, 2, end. And again, they're usually describing it as down, down, up. So you start to realize already that when we have a down strum, it's on that downbeat, right? Either 1, 2, 3, 4. And when we have an up strum, it's on the end. So if I strum down, I have 1, 2, end. So you can start to hear already the first hit, the first strum, lasts a quarter note. So we have 1, and then we don't have anything for the end of 1. Then our next strum again is down on beat 2. And then we're coming up on the end of 2 with an up strum. So if I count it slowly, 3, 4, I have 1, 2, end. Okay, and again, 3, 4, 1, 2, end. All right. Now, here's a little tricky part, because this end of 2 is going to last a quarter note. So your next hit is going to be on the end of 3. So let me count it out slowly, and you can hear on the end of 3, remember it's an up strum. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, let me simplify the count. 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3 and. So far we're this far into it. 3, 4, down, down, up, up. Okay? Now we just did the last strum on the end of 3. We're going to finish off by playing 4 end. So we've got down, up, and that finishes the strum pattern. Down, down, up, down, up. If I count out the rhythms, I have 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? So that, in a nutshell, is really, really important that you understand when those hits fall on what beat. So great ways, again, to recap. I know it's like a broken record I sound like, but remember, down beats, down strum, up beats, up strum. So that's going to help you tremendously with getting this pattern down. No pun intended. So that pattern goes throughout all 4 chords. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So remember, that's going to cycle through all 4 chords, but each chord only has 1 bar. Don't play it double like I did right there. So if we cycle through all 4 chords, we have 3, 4, C, 2, and 3, and 4, and A minor, 2, and 3, and 4, and E minor, 2, and 3, and 4, and G, 2, and 3, and 4, and it just repeats. Now in the performance, what I did when I got to G is I just strum on the 1 beat and held it out. So I cut short there to kick into the beginning of the technique. So now let's move on to part 3, where we learn the technique. So since we're cycling through the first part of the chords, remember that hits on beat 1. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Right, so it's very important that we're counting and we know where we are and when those hits begin. So timing is super important for this lesson. So we're going to strum the G on beat 1, and we're going to start counting. Now our first hits are going to begin on the end of 3 and beat 4. But before we get to that, let's talk about how I am doing the hits. So our thumb, we're going to be using that knuckle. See where the knuckle bends? We've only got 1 bend on this finger, unlike these ones. And I'm going to use that hard part of the knuckle right there to tap the saddle. Now I'm specifically going to hit in between the 4th and the 3rd string. Gives me a really nice tone. So I don't want to hit on the peg. So this ukulele, this Ukulele, has a peg system for keeping the strings in place. Most ukes, and probably the one that you're playing on, uses a double knot tie where you actually tie it here. The benefit of those is that it's going to be a little bit easier. You won't be restricted by the size of this peg. So you'll have a little bit more room, and it should be easier to play on those ukes than these ones. But you want to try and hit the saddle. So it's just that yellow, or actually it's kind of like a cream color. So you want to hit that cream color part of the bridge. And you just want to experiment a little bit. Remember to hit with this part of the thumb. So key things to remember, don't hit the actual peg or the bridge itself. We want to hit right in between 3rd and 4th string, right on the saddle. So you just want to practice a little bit. Make sure you get the tone to produce loudly and cleanly and a pleasant sound too. Because if I don't hit it exactly right, you can see that it just doesn't sound as good. So that's the first thing that you want to get down. Now, the next hit is with the index finger. So there's a couple places you can hit, and again, the tone's going to vary on where we hit. So I like to hit offset to the right of the sound hole. So below the strings, offset to the right of the sound hole. Now if you hit directly below the sound hole, you get a different tone. So it's up to you. I like this sound more. But if you watch her performance video below, you see she's got big old fingernails too, which is going to make it so that she can have more reach and she has more mobility in her hand movement. So she can hit over here if she wanted to. So it kind of depends on your playing style as well. For me, I don't ever have nails, so I like to keep things kind of more in a box, you know, not a ton of movement. With that said, go ahead and just practice jumping between thumb, index. Try to make both hits about the same volume, so that's key. You don't want to have one super loud, one super soft. So you want them to be about even. Once you produce a tone that you're happy with, let's move on to the next part. So we're jumping back to talking about when the hits begin now. So remember, the last chord that we strummed was G, right? So we strum the G, we're holding it out. We've got to count. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4, end. So very important that we're counting and we know when our first hits happen. So our first hit is with the thumb. It's on the end of 3. 1, 2, 3, end. Okay, so we're hitting on the end of 3, then we're hitting on beat 4 with the index finger, and then we're going to follow it up with an up strum with our index finger. Now, as we move into beat 1, we're going to be talking about strumming with the thumb for down strums and the index for up strums. What I did on the tab and what I do when I play this is I'm not worried about getting all 4 strings for strumming. I'm only focusing on getting 2 strings at a time. So when I'm strumming up with my index finger, I'm predominantly hitting 1 and 2. When I'm strumming down with my thumb, I'm predominantly hitting 4 and 3. So the thing with that is that as you're playing through it, it's just going to continually ring out. These 2 strings will ring out, these 2 strings will ring out. And it creates that sound of a full chord strum. So it really doesn't matter that you shouldn't really try to focus on doing a full big old movement because it's going to be too hard and you only have a short amount of time to put everything synced together. So try and focus on 2 at a time. So we're going to practice again the very end of the simple strumming with the beginning of the tapped hits. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, end. Okay, so I'm going to call out thumb, index, up. All right, so let's try that way. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Thumb, index, up. Okay, even slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Thumb, index, up. Okay, so that's going to be what kicks us off into beat number 1. So this is the main pattern. So this pattern has hits on every single 8th note. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so we've got 8 hits for the pattern. But let's do this. Let's break it in half because it's going to be much easier to comprehend if we do half at a time. So our first half sounds like this, then we'll break it down. So real quick, right? Let me count out the rhythm. I have 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. And if I call out the hits, I have thumb up, index down. All right, so let's break that down slowly because that's a lot to take in. All right, so we're only going to tackle the first 4 hits. So go ahead and make that C chord and let's tackle this. So our first hit is on beat 1 with our thumb. So we're going to hit on beat 1 and then we're going to follow it up with an up strum. Remember that up strum is only targeting strings 1 and 2, so 2 strings at a time. So we've got thumb up. Then for the third hit, we're going to take the index, tap, and then follow it up with a down strum. Remember that down strum is only targeting 4 and 3, so 2 strings at a time. So that's key for our strums. So if we put that together, guys, out of the C chord, we have thumb up, tap, down strum. Okay, so thumb up, tap down, thumb up, tap down, thumb up, tap down. So that rhythm again is 1 and 2 and. So straight eighth notes. So let's try you and I together. I'll call out the thumb up part. That'll be easier to follow with. So here we go. 3 and 4 and thumb up, index down, thumb up, index down, thumb up, index down. All right, so let's go ahead and tackle the second half. And remember, we're only doing 4 hits. So here's what the second half, and it begins on beat 3. Okay, so again, quick, let me call it out. I have up, thumb, index, up. If I call out the rhythm, I have 3 and 4 end. All right, so the first thing you're noticing is that it starts with an up strum on beat 3. So it breaks our rule of thumb, right? It breaks the generally we strum down on the downbeat, up on the upbeat. So sometimes rules are meant to be broken, and that's what happens here in order to do this technique smoothly. All right, so keep that C chord intact. Now our first hit is an up strum. So remember, again, focusing only on strings 1 and 2. The next hit is our hit with the thumb. Okay, so we have up, thumb, up, thumb. So that's beat 3 and the end of 3. 3 end. After that, we have beat 4 and the end of 4. So the next hit is the index and then again an up strum. So we have index, up. So if we put that together, guys, we have up, thumb, index, up, thumb, index, up, thumb, index, up. Alright guys, so the overall goal is to get the pattern memorized. So it's always great to break it in half, but eventually we want to put it together, so all 8 hits together. So if I don't form a chord and I just focus on the hits and calling it out, all 8 of them together sound and go in this order. So we have thumb up, index down, up, thumb, index up. So that's your goal. That's what you want to memorize. So once you've got that memorized, then let's try it together. So again, we're just going to form the C chord, and we're going to try that entire pattern together. So here we go. Slowly. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and thumb up, index down, up, thumb, index up, thumb up, index down, up, thumb, index up, thumb up, index down, up, thumb, index up, thumb up, index down, up, thumb, index up. All right, so there is the technique in a nutshell. So like any technique that you do, make sure you go slow and you understand the timing. So gradually we want to build speed. So don't worry about playing it super fast off the bat. You want to get the synchronization locked in. So you want to get comfortable with the dexterity requirement of this new technique using these hits before you try to worry about speeding it up. Now the good thing about getting the pattern down is that it repeats for each chord change. So remember, each chord gets its own bar. There's only 4 bars and it just keeps looping, right? So the first time through you're playing on C, then A minor, E minor, and G. So it's the same pattern each time through, right? But you can see that the hard part too is that you've got to keep the change. So that's the other thing when I was talking about synchronizing it, is that you've got to be moving with the left hand too, as well as keeping the pattern of the right hand steady. So a little tricky. So if we cycle through just the first 2 bars, we have slowly 3 and 4 and thumb up, index down, up, thumb, index up, thumb up, index down, up, thumb, index up. So the chord change actually happens on the end of 1. So watch how I'm switching chords. I'm going to count it out slowly and listen to that end of 1 to see when that chord change happens. So I have 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4 and. So by doing that, it's going to allow this chords to ring out much better than if you were to try to change directly on beat 1. So that's why we're switching on the ends of 1. So that's one thing that you want to practice too while you're cycling through it. So let's do this. Let's try you and I go on just the first 2 bars, C to A minor. Remember, the pattern's the same, but try and get that chord change to happen on the end of 1. So here we go, slowly. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Alright, so that's the key thing. Now again, the tricky thing for the next half is going E minor to G, but if we talked about it earlier, if you skip to the technique, then you miss that part. Remember that when we're doing chord changes, we want to try to move all 3 fingers in unison. So if you're the type of player that's always goes ba 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 when you form a chord, it won't cut it for this tune. We've got to move all 3 fingers at the same time in unison. So if you're new to that, then you will just want to practice real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get comfortable with that, speed it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're just practicing to develop the muscle memory of going from one tricky chord to the next. All right, so let's see if we can cycle the second half together. So E minor to G. Slowly. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so you just want to practice, try first and second bar, then third and fourth bar, and then try to tackle 1 through 4. It's going to make it much easier to knock this out quicker. So that, in a nutshell, guys, that's beat 1. So let's try all 4 together one time slowly. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4 and. Okay, so that covers everything for beat 1. Now beat 2 takes the same pattern, but it makes it a little bit sparse. We have a quarter note rest right in the middle. So it's the same pattern, but there's a couple hits that we're not playing, we're just sustaining. So those hits happen on the end of 2 and beat 3. So we're cutting out the pattern for those 2 hits, the end of 2 and beat 3. So if I was to play beat 2, it sounds like this. And listen to those hits, and I'll count it out. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Alright, so as you see, we do have a bit of a pause. So if I counted it again, I'm going to go pause, pause for the end of 2 and 3. So 3 and 4 and thumb up, index, pause, pause, thumb, index up, thumb up, index, pause, pause, thumb, index up. So we've got a rest in between, right? Or we're sustaining, really. All right, so let's break down those hits. So it's the same as before. We're literally just leaving 2 out. So the first 3 hits are going to be thumb up, index. So if we try that together, and we'll form it out of the C chord. So 3 and 4 and thumb up, index. Okay, if I count out the rhythm, I have 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So when you get to that index tap, you want to make sure that you're counting out so that you keep the timing steady. So when you're playing, you want to be 1 and 2 and 3, because on the end of 3 is the next hit, and that's going to be thumb, index, up. So you want to make sure that you come back in time. So it's very vital that you either tap along or you count out loud or count in your head to help keep in time for this one pause part or this one sustaining break. So let me go ahead and count through. And I have 1 and 2 and 3 and. So I know exactly when to come in. So I'm coming in on the end of 3, and it's going to be a thumb hit followed by the index and an up strum. So it's the same thing as we learned in the very beginning of this technique. It's what kicked off from the G chord. Remember when we strummed the G chord, we had that series to that preceded beat 1. So it's the same thing that's happening here. So again, on the end of 3 we have thumb, then the index finger for beat 4, and an up for the end of 4. So the key is just to count it out. So let's try together slowly, guys. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So same thing as before, we're switching chords on the end of 1. Now, this beat 2, that pattern only changes for the first 2 chords, because when you go back to E minor, you're playing the same as beat 1. So all that's identical. So beat 2 in essence is just 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4 and. So before we wrap up and talk about the order of this little demo tune that we're learning this technique out of, let's go again on beat 2, just you and I trying it together, just the first chord to the second chord, C to A minor. So it sounds like this: 3 and 4 and thumb up, index, and 3, thumb, index, up, thumb, up, index, and 3, thumb, index, up. Okay? So that's everything for beat 2. Remember, this next 2 chords are the same as beat 1. So the form for this little demo tune, we had strumming for 4 bars. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. So we have that kickoff with the taps and the G chord, so bar 4. And then it goes into beat 1. That's going to cycle through 2 times before you get to beat 2. And that's going to cycle through 2 times as well, and then you're back into beat 1. And that little ending, that last time through, so you're going through it 1 time, that's 4 bars, and then the 5th bar for the very ending goes back to the C chord, so we're going to resolve on the 1 chord, and it's just 1 and 2. So you have thumb up, index, thumb up, index. And that's a cool little way to end the tune. So very, very simple ending, but it works. So guys, that's everything for this lesson. Again, it's a really, really cool technique, really interesting, kind of like a wow factor. I mean, it's very unique. You know, you don't see it or hear it all the time. I didn't know it existed until I saw it a month ago. And that's the thing about playing music, is that there's never a time when you are a master of everything. There's always something that we can continue to learn and draw inspiration from. So again, guys, you can get the tab to follow along with at rockclass101.com. Just click this link right here or do a search for drum-like rhythm. And again, if you want to access the on-screen tab viewer, well, that's available with premium membership. You can actually test it out 100% free if you go to the site and click free lessons. There's 4 lessons at the top of that page that you can try for free that are premium member lessons that include access to the on-screen tab viewer. It's really, really cool, so check it out if you haven't yet. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.